Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you exclusive interviews with leading experts every weekday here on Al Arabiya News. I'm Tom Burges Watson, and in today's special program, we take a look back at some of the best interviews during the last couple of days. Let's get more now. We can speak to Carla, the former US ambassador to Denmark under President Trump. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Always a pleasure talking to you, Ambassador. Not quite 100 days, we're nearly there. What would you single out as being the most important achievements of this new Trump administration when it comes to foreign policy?
It's extremely exciting to talk about because President Trump is working so hard and so fast, and his whole team is as well. So I think if my highlights would be that, it's the promises made, promises kept. He promised to make us wealthy again, to make us healthy again, to make us safe again. And you can see that he's working on getting more reciprocal trade deals and reindustrializing the U.S. He's working to with RFK Jr. to make us healthy again, finding the cause of autism. Like, what a concept that you would actually do a scientific study and find out what's causing this terrible attack on our children, and getting things like unsafe dyes out of our food. But then he's also secured the border. It's making us safe again, stopping the flow of fentanyl, the #1 killer of young Americans, and also the bad hombres that have been coming over our border and that are not welcome.
Okay, but specifically on the world stage, looking at these 100 days through the prism of foreign policy, what's been achieved, would you say?
Okay, I think that in my opinion, so my personal opinion is that what's been achieved is our friends know they're our friends, and the people that are not treating us well know it. We've put them on notice. You can see how he's pulling in so many countries, getting a good trade deal done that doesn't hurt American manufacturers, for instance. I think that looking at how President Trump views the world, he doesn't want to start new wars and he wants to end current wars. We can all be appreciative that he's using his influence and his position to end the Hamas-Israel war and also the war between Russia and Ukraine.
Indeed. I mean, he did promise that would happen rather quicker than at day 99. And we haven't quite got there yet, have we? We're not over the line.
No, he did. Actually, what he said was he thought that the Hamas-Israel war would be pretty quick. And he said it's going to be harder and take longer to get the war between Ukraine and Russia settled. And you can see, I mean, Putin's suggesting this 72-hour pause, but Putin's also continuing to attack Ukraine. And both sides have been a little hard to really get to the table and understand that nobody gets everything that they want. But certainly he's working very hard, and his team, to get this done. You saw the iconic photo, perhaps, of President Trump and Zelensky there at the Vatican meeting and working out a deal.
Yeah, I mean, that photograph in stark contrast to the scenes in the Oval Office 6 or 7 weeks previously, which perhaps was the other big standout scene when it comes to foreign policy from these last 99/100 days. This keenness to appease Russia that's how it's seen internationally, that President Trump is making concessions to the Russians and occasionally throwing, good old friend Ukraine under the bus every now and then with the occasional European ally. That is the perception out there from some countries, from some news outlets. How do you respond to that, and why do you think President Trump is so keen to patch ties up with President Putin? What's in it for America?
Well, first of all, a lot of that is fake news. You can see that there's this narrative. They even talked about how they hid Joe Biden's mental diminishment in the coverage of the last administration, and how people in the United States have actually lost faith with legacy media. Maybe not around the world, but here in the US, we've seen the lies, whether it was COVID lies, the lockdown lies, the Russia hoax lies over the first Trump administration. So people don't believe the news media when they talk about these things. We know that they're making stuff up to hurt the opposition. Most U.S. media is working for the left and the leftist Democrats. But I'm excited that President Trump is reasserting America's place in the world and that he knows we need to have better relations with Russia because we don't want Russia to be the closest of friends with China. And certainly that was a very bad plan from the beginning. Biden let that happen. Every president before knew that that was a bad idea and that we should not encourage or push Russia into China's arms. I mean, Russia's now, it's almost like they work for China in the things that they do. And China's helping them finance and helping them in many ways in this Ukraine war. So we want to have a better relationship with Russia. Certainly, we need to cooperate with Russia in the Arctic. They're the biggest player in the Arctic as far as their landmass and their power in that region. And we need to reassert Western power in that region, just as one example.
Yeah, I want to get on to Greenland in just a moment because, of course, that's where you served and that's a hot topic. And we've talked about it before, Ambassador. But there are some analysts saying that these policies, foreign policies of this new Trump administration are conversely pushing traditional allies towards China, not only as a market for their goods because of the tariffs, but also because of the void that has been created by the withdrawal of US aid projects all over the world. And the Chinese are only too happy to fill that void. I mean, isn't this going to cost the United States soft power?
Well, I think that could be an issue. And so I think that we want to make sure that we continue a good dialogue with all of our friends, our allies, our trading partners, and that we certainly remind them of the dangers of being tied in trade to China, which uses trade and uses all relations that countries have with China as a cudgel, and how unfair the trade is. I know Secretary of Scott Bessent is working on these issues and talking to our allies because, for instance, the abuses that China has weighed in at the WTO, at the IMF. China is the biggest abuser in every way of using our laws and our open societies against us, stealing and bribing and using propaganda in ways that have enriched their country. And their national law requires every Chinese citizen, and they say even people with Chinese descent, to steal and to bring back information that benefits the CCP. So it's a rogue regime. It's run by gangsters, and that's a bad group to get involved with.
Let's go back to the part of the world that perhaps you know best. I don't know, perhaps outside the United States, Denmark, where you served as ambassador. How many years were you there?
I was there from 2017 to 2021.
Right. So you know that area well. I don't know if you still go back there, but do you see a day that you go back to Greenland, which is, of course, under Danish sovereignty, and find it one day is actually part of the United States of America? Is that a scenario you envisage?
Well, I think that Greenland wants to go independent, and I think that because they've said it. So I believe what people say, and they've said it publicly. So if they're going to go independent, they're going to need a trade partner and a security partner. And Denmark, even today, with them being part of the Danish kingdom, can't defend Greenland and has never bothered to develop Greenland. There's not a road between two towns in Greenland. They lack infrastructure to benefit the Greenlanders when it comes to their mining. They need more development for their tourism. And I was able, when I was ambassador, to get them funds to help them grow their economy in the ways they wanted to. But it was just a beginning.
Do people in Greenland tell you they want to be American?
They want to be Greenlandic. They say we are open for business, but they don't want to be taken over. And there are ways to associate with the United States and be independent, like a free association agreement. It's called a COFA. And other countries like Micronesia and Palau do have those kinds of relationships with the United States, where they're sovereign nations, but we have trade and we have defense agreements. And Greenland would benefit from American trade, where U.S. companies can go in and invest, and they have the backstop of the U.S. government. We have mechanisms to do that, like Exim Bank and also DFC, Development Finance Corporation, that are arms of the US government, but they guarantee investments when it's a tough place to invest. And Greenland's a tough place to invest.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like quite harsh terrain in some parts of that territory as well. But when we saw J.D. Vance arriving there with his wife, and originally it was going to be there's going to be quite a bit more fanfare than there ultimately was, because he just limited his visit to a US base. Do you think he went about that in the right way? I mean, there's a certain sensitivity, isn't there, to arriving in a country having insinuated previously that you might sort of absorb it into your own country. Do you think he went about it in the way you'd like to have seen him go about it?
Well, I think that Greenlanders missed an amazing opportunity, because the second lady, Usha Vance, was supposed to go and wave the flag at it's the equivalent of the Super Bowl for Greenland. It's their big dog sled race. And the US government had given assets to help them have a successful race. And she was part of this. And so this was a diplomatic visit. Every country wants a diplomatic visit in the world from the US. And she's a very high level official, being the wife of the vice president. But the Danish government, their media, and their sort of apparatus poisoned the water for that visit and really scuttled the whole thing. They did it because they don't want the Greenlanders to have a good relationship with the United States. They want no relationship at this point. They're so upset about what President Trump has been saying. But the fact is, they're not looking at the facts. The fact is, Greenland wants to go independent. They want to be independent. They don't want to be part of part of Denmark. Denmark oppressed the Greenlanders. They treated them very cruelly. And they did not allow them to develop. They did not allow them to live like people in Denmark live years ago. And so they send about $600 million a year as welfare to Greenland, but then they get so many benefits. The shipping goes through Denmark, the flights go through Denmark, then they have the benefits of business investments. And so net, I'm sure Denmark comes out ahead in this relationship.
Okay, so that's Greenland, but there are other countries and bits of infrastructure around the world that President Trump has expressed a keen interest in, shall we say. One is Canada. Will that be the 51st state of the United States? And another is the Panama Canal. I mean, is there an expansionist agenda in the White House, in your view?
I'm not sure why President Trump said what he did about Canada. I've been very sad to see the loss of free speech in Canada and how the Canadian government has treated the citizens over the past about a decade, but it really ramped up during COVID and after COVID. It's been shocking to see. And also, they've opened their borders to unbridled immigration, which really, you lose the culture of a place when you don't have control of who comes in. And they now have a fentanyl problem because of those open borders. They actually have a fentanyl problem, I'm told. When I was at the Canadian Embassy just about a week ago, they informed me of this, and it's tragic. But Panama Canal is a different subject. We have to have the ability to move our military equipment and shipping through the Panama Canal. The United States paid for the Panama Canal. We built the Panama Canal. Most Americans don't agree with Jimmy Carter. We should never have ceded that back to Panama. And when I went down to the Panama Canal, I saw how much Chinese activity was there. I went to the canal, viewed it, saw the signs in Chinese. I went to their touristic video to see what they were showing people. And a lot of it was China, China, China. I think probably Chinese propaganda had produced the video that I saw at that time. It's about 1.5 years ago that I was there. So China has an outsized influence in Panama. The United States cannot allow that right in our hemisphere. But we've got bigger problems. Even in Lima, Peru, Chancay Port is the biggest Chinese investment in the Western Hemisphere. That port is only 1/4 finished. It's going to be gigantic. The United States had the opportunity to build that port, but China stepped up. So there are so many missed opportunities. President Trump is looking at our hemisphere and saying, we need to make sure we secure it. Americans agree with him.
All right, I'm so sorry to cut you short, but we're actually out of time. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Carla Sands, former US ambassador to Denmark.
Great to be with you, Tom. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thanks.
In other news, we have all turned at some point to Wikipedia For many, it's a go-to for quick, summarized information. Well, Wikipedia has become one of the internet's most influential platforms, so much so that people with a wealth of knowledge are often dubbed walking Wikipedias, just like walking encyclopedias. Well, to find out more, we're joined now by the founder of Wikipedia to talk about its evolution, impact, and his latest exchanges with the US tech mogul Elon Musk. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Jimmy Wales. Really great to have you with us from London. I want to start by talking about some headlines that we've been seeing in the last couple of days and weeks. Elon Musk calling Wiki a left-wing propaganda tool. He's even called it Wokepedia. Why is he so angry?
Well, I can't really speak for what goes through Elon's mind. You know, his concern is a perceived left-wing bias of Wikipedia, and that we've gone somehow crazy woke. But every time I try to get examples from people who agree with him, they're very, very hard-pressed to come up with examples that actually make any sense. Obviously, Wikipedia isn't perfect. You can find entries that are, for a short period of time anyway, biased and so forth. But, you know, within our community, we have a really strong commitment to neutrality, to objectivity. And what I've been saying to Elon is, look, if you're not happy about Wikipedia, the thing to do is encourage thoughtful, kind people who are conservatives to come and join us, come and participate. We're really looking for any examples of bias.
So how do you respond to the accusation, for example, from the Manhattan Institute? It's a think tank which has reported concerns that Wiki is more hard on right-leaning public figures than it is on left-leaning public figures. How do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, when I look at the actual paper there, it's just not persuasive to me. They don't really marshal all the right kinds of evidence and so forth. I mean, one of the issues is obviously Wikipedia will reflect the media, and so to the extent that we are quoting from major media and so forth, if there's certain language like far right that appear more often than far left, well, that actually can reflect bias in the media, but it also can reflect sort of a current state of the affairs. And in other words, the far left you know, exists, and they're talked about quite a lot, and the far right as well. So, you know, I don't really see that as a massive problem, other than sort of more broadly to say, gee, you know, like the media should probably rein in the way they talk about things and really strive hard for neutrality.
Now, Mr. Musk, but first of all, do you know Elon Musk? Do you ever have any exchanges with him directly, or is this all being played out in the public arena?
No, yeah, I know him, and he's very friendly, friendlier privately than publicly, let's just say.
All right. Well, he of course paid $44 billion US for Twitter, which he renamed X, and then back in October 2023, he offered to buy Wikipedia for $1 billion, I think it was, with various conditions. You rejected that offer. What would it take to make you reconsider?
No, I mean, so Wikipedia is a charity, so we're like the Red Cross, say. So the idea of selling Wikipedia doesn't actually make any sense. But also, I think it's really important, culturally important, that we have a place where people come together to try and understand the world, to have civil discourse, really looking into the facts, really trying to write things in a fair and neutral way. It's never going to be perfect, of course, but if we don't have that space, it becomes really hard to make progress in the world, because instead we just get people screaming at each other. You get all the kinds of misinformation and disinformation, which Elon Musk is notorious for spreading things that aren't true. And, you know, we really need to say, okay, slow down. Let's think. There are a lot of problems in the world. Let's chew on all the sides of the issue and make sure we understand each other before we act, because the alternative is violence and basically making bad decisions.
Yeah, so you could argue, couldn't you, that the guardrails and the importance of guardrails are perhaps more important now than at any point in Wikipedia's 25-year history, given the times we live in?
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that I believe we've seen, not across the board, but in many places, is a media landscape that has become more fragmented and more divided, more polarizing, more polarized. Certainly in the United States, you can say politics is extremely polarized there, both the public's view of politics, but also in Congress. You know, the instances of people working together in a civil way to find compromises that work for more people are very hard to find these days. It's really like whoever's in charge pushes as hard as they can, rather than saying, okay, let's try and work together and govern effectively. So yeah, I think definitely these ideas of building trust in each other, building trust in the knowledge that we have, is more important than ever before.
So just to be clear, before we move on, Wikipedia is not and cannot be for sale.
It is not and cannot be for sale, no. No interest whatsoever.
Elon Musk, of course, very upset about accusations that he made a Nazi salute, and he went on to demand a boycott of Wikipedia until his entry, or the entry on Nazi salutes in general, was changed. Have people heeded that call to stop funding Wikipedia?
No, I mean, actually, we normally get a nice surge in donations every time he says don't give money to Wikipedia. It's sort of like he's kind of seeing fewer car sales with his behavior. People don't do what Elon says. They respond to Elon in certain ways. And I think he's doing himself far more harm than he's doing to us, that's for sure. But we do worry about it, of course.
Okay, he wants that defunding to continue until balance is restored, he said. So you're saying that his declarations of this kind have absolutely no impact on Wiki's finances?
No, not that we've seen so far, and I think it's unlikely that it would. I mean, I think people can look at things and say, gee, actually, the piece he was complaining about the salute, Wikipedia didn't say it was a Nazi salute. Wikipedia reported that he made a gesture, reported that lots of people said it looked like a Nazi salute, reported that he denied it. And those are just the facts. Like, there's nothing controversial about saying that's what happened. If Wikipedia said Elon made a Nazi salute, and we don't care if he said he didn't, we say it is anyway, then we would be biased. Then that wouldn't be fair. But to say, look, here's some facts, here's some things that happened, learn about it and make up your own mind.
It is, of course, a very unusual model. It must have sounded extremely revolutionary, when it was launched 25 years ago, being a participatory encyclopedia. I mean, no one had ever heard of one until 25 years ago. But how do you go about making sure that it's got neither a left-wing nor a right-wing bias?
Well, I think there's no real magic to that. I mean, it really depends on us having a healthy community, on having an openness to dialogue, openness to discourse. We have rules about neutrality, rules about quality sourcing. It really, it could go in a really bad and a really dark direction. I mean, people used to be concerned to be taken over by trolls or whatever it might be. Instead, we just have to, it's like, how can a journalistic organization make sure that they're adhering to proper journalistic principles and really reporting fairly on all sides? Well, there's no magic button. You just have to do it. It's hard work, and you have to really think about it and be passionate about it.
Do you have any role in the sort of the day-to-day entry writing of Wikipedia entries? Do you ever see something and call it out?
Rarely. My role is really more about coaching, really about reminding people of our values, of helping people think through how can we resolve certain issues and things like that. It's not for me. I'm not the final arbiter of what goes into a Wikipedia entry, and nor should I be.
Okay, of course, nobody in the world is politically neutral, and that goes for you as well, I'm sure, sir. I mean, do you make it public how you identify politically?
I mean, a little bit. I'm very centrist. My politics are very boring. When I see certain things going on in the world, there's certain things like if you think back on something like Obamacare in the U.S., sort of a big restructuring of how the healthcare system works. I was like, I'm not an expert on healthcare, so nobody wants to know my opinion, or if they do want to know it, they shouldn't, because what do I know? Very little. At the same time, I do have views on things that I am an expert on, things about internet freedom, about freedom of expression, about the importance of dialogue and discourse and thoughtfulness and kindness online. So in that sense, yes, I do occasionally express opinions. But, generally, I don't like people on the far left, and I don't like people on the far right. I don't think those are ever going to be the right answers. We need lots of thoughtful, kind people in the center saying, okay, look, we're not going to agree about everything, but let's work through things. Let's find policies that tend to lead to a better life on Earth.
Okay, I won't probe you too much on this one, but just one last attempt here. Were you cheering or perhaps not during the inauguration of President Trump 2 weeks ago?
I mean, definitely not. But I think I should hasten to add, I really dislike Donald Trump's style. I don't like the way he behaves. I think he's arrogant, disrespectful, the opposite of the kind of thoughtful discourse that I would like to see. And all of that is about him personally, not about any particular policies, although, to be fair, I disagree with a lot of his policies, too. I agree with a few of them. You know, I mean, Elon's working very hard to cut waste in government, and that's obviously a huge amount of noise right now about that. Well, what does that mean? I'm not sure, but I certainly would like to see less waste in government. So, you know, to some extent, I think it's good if the government is taking a hard look at everything in a much more business-like way to say, where are we just wasting money doing things that we shouldn't be doing in the first place? Great, I'm all for that. I might agree or disagree with 1,000 different cuts in various places. But, you know, I would prefer if we were doing all of this in a less combative and less hostile environment.
Okay, now we all use Wikipedia. I have to confess, I quite often look up stats and factoids on Wikipedia. The people who contribute are known as Wikipedians. Tell us a bit about who they are and how they're chosen.
Yeah, so I mean, Wikipedians tend to be very nice, geeky people. That's kind of the core personality type. They're very nerdy and they really want to get the facts right. They care more about Wikipedia than do any of these kind of social debates and things like that. At least the best Wikipedians try to not show bias and so forth. You know, it's a hobby that people are very passionate about, and I think it's kind of cool.
Okay, and they're anonymous and they're not paid. So what's the incentive? What drives a Wikipedian, do you think?
So they're anonymous only in the sense that, you know, they're not becoming famous. They're not social media influencers, and they're not bloggers, and they're not tweeting. Some of them might tweet, but they know each other. I mean, we know them, and they know each other, and they're just sort of normal geeky people. The main things people get out of it are two, I would say. One, it's fun. Like if you're really, really into, I don't know, trains, you can come to Wikipedia and find other people who are super geeky about trains, and you can help, you know, write about all the different history of the train system and individual train cars and all of that kind of stuff that train geeks like. So it's fun in that sense, but also I think you can spend time online and sort of, I think a lot of people have had this experience. You accidentally got sucked into TikTok for 2 hours and you think, oh my God, I'm wasting my life. This is not good. I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't great. Whereas if you spend 2 hours improving the Wikipedia entry, you can go to bed thinking, you know what? I made the world a little bit better. Somebody's going to read this and they're going to learn from what I've written, and that's a great thing. So that's one of the big motivations.
A long time ago, I worked for an American TV channel, and I had a boss who forbade us from using Wikipedia. She kept saying to us that Wikipedia is not a source, she used to say to us. What would you say to her?
Say, that's right. You're exactly right. Yeah. Wikipedia is not a source. You shouldn't use it. The same reason you shouldn't really look something up in an encyclopedia, particularly in a journalistic context. What I would say is you shouldn't say don't read Wikipedia. You should say read Wikipedia, get yourself oriented, and then go to the talk page of the article and see what are the Wikipedians struggling with? What are the questions that people have that haven't really been answered? That's your good questions as a journalist. That's where you go and you go actually talk to the real sources, which is, you know, the people, the companies, the organizations that you're reporting on.
Yeah, another example of how we use Wikipedia in the workplace, and I think a lot of TV anchors will identify with this. You know, when someone dies, you know, you get breaking news, and you suddenly have to do, you know, a fact check on who someone was and get their bio in front of you. And what always amazes me is if the wires have only just announced that the person has died, Wikipedia seems to have already been updated. How on earth do you manage to update a page that quickly and even have a little section entitled Death to talk about the person who's just departed? Yeah,
well, we've got a lot of volunteers and they, you know, they like to do that. I mean, my I don't think I've ever done that because I'm not fast enough. But my little fun hobby is at every recent royal wedding, I changed the name to the new title and try to do it before anybody else. So far, I'm successful. So just people enjoy doing it, and sometimes it's people who are fans of that person. Sometimes it's people who are just happen to see the thing come across the news and they just quickly go and edit and make a change. So yeah, it's a very busy, active community.
And how many sort of layers of checking occur to make sure that you haven't accidentally killed someone off that isn't in fact dead?
Yeah, I mean, there's a great story actually. When Michael Jackson died, it was for several hours only reported in a well-known gossip blog, which is not really considered to be a fantastic source. I mean, it's a blog and may or may not have fact checking. But there was a big debate in Wikipedia, like, should we cover it? And people said, no, let's wait until any sort of standard news outlet reports it. And so we were actually kind of late on that one because of the way that it came into the public eye. So the community is always thinking about these issues. They're always discussing, debating, and so forth. And in that case, if you went back and looked at the history, I suspect it was changed and changed back a couple of times as somebody was like, no, look, it says it here, he's dead. And then people are like, hold on, that's not really confirmed yet. Let's not put that in.
Wikipedia is coming up for its first quarter of a century. There's a big birthday coming up fairly soon. Very hard to imagine the world without Wikipedia. I'll hand you that.
That's for sure.
And it calls itself the world's free encyclopedia. Will it always be free?
Oh yeah, that is something that there's no question about. So Wikipedia is a charity. Our mission is to give away a free encyclopedia to everyone in the world. It's really at the heart of what we do. We don't have any advertising on the site. That's also very important because it would raise all kinds of incentive problems. We would be tempted to go down the path of clickbait and all of that sort of thing. So we do rely on donations, and the vast majority of the money that funds Wikipedia is from small donors, giving in, $25, that sort of thing. So that's all really important to us, and we won't change anything about that.
How did you come up with the idea?
Well, I was watching the growth of free software, most people call it open source software, and seeing programmers coming together to collaborate in new ways, using free licensing as a model to deal with incentive issues. And I realized that kind of collaboration could extend beyond software into all kinds of cultural works, and the encyclopedia was the obvious place to start. And it turns out that was an idea a lot of people liked.
Yeah, and it was in 2001, long before social media started really having the impact that it has in the area we live in now. I mean, did you imagine at the time that we'd find ourselves a quarter of a century later in a situation where truth and facts were sort of up for debate?
I mean, it's a little frustrating because, sort of my vision and my role is to say, look, let's put together a very calm, neutral body of facts. We try to address all the major points of view and explain them fairly, and people can learn from that and decide and so forth. And, now we're in this really chaotic and noisy place where algorithms are driving anger and misinformation flies around like crazy, and the richest man in the world posts complete nonsense on a regular basis. I wish it were different, but the only thing I know to do is just keep plugging away.
You recently said that the decline of trust in journalism and politics, quote, sometimes translates into people feeling more angry and lost. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I've misquoted you. Were you talking specifically about the United States, or do you think that's something, do you think the same can be said of lots of other countries as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure that was an exact quote, but it's close enough. It sounds like me. Yeah, I think it's a problem not just in the United States. I think it's felt particularly acutely in the United States, but I think all around the world we've seen a decline in local newspapers, a rise in sort of fractured publics. Some places are better than others. Some smaller countries are more harmonious societies to start with. They don't have the same divisions. But I think it's globally, it's definitely we've seen a rise in it, and we're beginning to see, the rise of things like tariffs and trade wars, which is very bad for everybody. And, I think we're going to sort of feel the consequences for a while until people come to their senses. So.
Sure, and I'm just wondering as well, sort of looking at the global wiki in the global context, you presumably get complaints, lots of complaints in the United States. Well, we know that because we were talking about it earlier on. Do you get complaints from other countries? You know, people saying you've unfairly characterized our head of state or unfairly described our history, the history of our country?
Yeah, I mean, certainly just because the whole world is a big and noisy place. There's a complaint about almost anything you can think of. So, of course, we do. We don't really experience that many places that are trying to threaten us legally, certainly not at the state level. We do occasionally have to deal with things. We were blocked in Turkey for about 3 years, and we won a case in the Supreme Court in Turkey to be unblocked, and we're very proud of that. But, you know, there's always something going on. But what we do is just stick to our principles. We say, look, we want to make Wikipedia as good as it possibly can be. If there's something negative about your leader, your country, or whatever, we are going to report on that. But we're going to report on the debate, not, you know, take a side on that debate.
Now, new evidence suggests we may not be alone in the universe. Well, scientists have discovered what they're calling the strongest evidence yet of life beyond Earth on a distant planet named K2-18b. Well, roughly 2.5 times the size of planet Earth, K2-18b lies about 124 light years away, or around 700 trillion miles away. That's well beyond the reach of human travel. Well, the discovery comes from a team at Cambridge University, which detected molecules in the planet's atmosphere that on Earth are only produced by simple living organisms. Well, the signs were spotted using NASA's James Webb Telescope. Well, let's get more on this discovery, and we can speak now to Dr. David Whitehouse, who is a space expert and the author of biographies on the Moon and the Sun. We can also speak to Nick Pope, former chief UFO investigator for the British Ministry of Defence. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us. Dr. Whitehouse, let me start with you. Are you excited?
I'm moderately excited. This is a very interesting hint, the first step on the ladder of finding out if there's life in space. This is a very different planet, as you've said, a much larger planet, a planet that could be gaseous like Uranus and Neptune, or perhaps even have an ocean. And it orbits a very different type of star, a red dwarf star, which is much fainter than the Sun, but it orbits closer in than the Earth does of our star. And it receives about as much radiation and heat, and therefore you could have liquid water on the surface of this planet. And what James Webb has done, it's able to exquisitely look at the atmosphere of exoplanets, of these planets around nearby stars, and tell you something about their chemical structure. And there is a molecule, we think, in this atmosphere, which is, on the Earth at least, is only produced by life. And therefore it is a hint. And the question now is it the case that this is only produced by life, or are there other ways to produce it, which could be a possibility, this could be what it's telling us, or is this indicative of perhaps an ecology of some sort down there on the surface of the planet or down there in the ocean of the planet? This is very early days. It is only a hint. It may well go away, but we may have to wait for other observatories like the forthcoming Habitable Worlds observatories to make a closer look at this to find out for sure.
Okay, Nick, let me turn to you. What went through your mind when you heard this news?
Well, I'm very excited about this. I think it's great news, and I think it's going to kickstart a very interesting global conversation about the implications of all this. I mean, it's important to say, of course, that this has not yet been confirmed. We need more validation, we need more data, and that's going to happen. And even if it is confirmed, of course, this is likely to be microbial life and certainly not something more advanced. I mean, this is a biosignature, not a technosignature. A technosignature would be very exciting because it would indicate an industrial, perhaps spacefaring civilization. But whatever the truth of this is, as I say, an opportunity to have a very interesting global conversation, because the implications of our not being alone are going to be deep and profound, and they're going to affect everything from religious belief to personal philosophy as we think about who we are and what our place is in the cosmos.
Yeah, I want to ask you, Dr. Whitehouse, what you think it would mean for humankind to know and to have proof of life on another planet?
Well, if it does turn out that this is an ecology of some sort, then that is highly significant, because the gap between no life and a bacterium is much greater than that between a bacterium and ourselves. It is the major step in the formation of life. So if we find ecologies on nearby planets, then yes, it does confirm what is a growing feeling among astronomers, that the universe could be well teeming with life, and that the universe has, on the planets and perhaps in other areas as well throughout the cosmos, a fertile ground for life to develop in whatever form it could develop. So this is extremely interesting. It's pointing the right way to life in space, but this is far from the evidence of intelligence, which many people want, which would only come with, say, a signal, an arrival, or an artifact. And that would enable us to put ourselves in a cosmic context, to ask the important questions of ourselves as to whether or not, as a species, we are unusual, whether or not we are common, whether or not our type of species is widespread, or whether or not other species out there which are bound to be older than ourselves are fundamentally different. We will not understand ourselves, our religion, our philosophy, our history, our science, unless we have another species born under the light of a different star, possibly much older than ourselves, to compare ourselves with.
Nick, when you were at the Ministry of Defence investigating UFOs, I mean, did you think that perhaps in your lifetime the day would come when, I know we're not there yet, and I'm not getting ahead of myself, but did you think perhaps the day would come in your lifetime that we would see and discover life forms on another planet?
I thought so, yes. I mean, unless we thought there was something almost literally magical in a sort of Harry Potter way about planet Earth, and life was unique. It seemed to me that the laws of physics were going to be the same in the observable universe, and chemistry and such like. And the fact that even though this planet, 124 light years is an unimaginable distance for us, but yet in cosmic terms, it's right on our doorstep. And so the implication would be if life exists here on Earth and just 124 light years away, then there should be other life out there. And given the age of the universe and the rate of star formation, it's intriguing to speculate that there could be, if that life has evolved into something more complex like us, there could be civilizations out there that might be 1 billion more years ahead of us. And that's a really interesting thought, and perhaps a little bit of a scary one too. But again, time to have this conversation about the potential societal impact of finding out that we're not alone in the universe, and maybe one day having some sort of contact.
Yeah, I mean, it raises a lot of questions, and as we've been saying, it challenges pretty much every norm every human that's ever lived has had established in their brain. I just want to ask you, Dr. Whitehouse, I mean, this was found by the James Webb Space Telescope, launched about 4 years ago. I mean, there are other space telescopes in production, and presumably they're constantly being upgraded, and new ones are coming out. NASA's got one. Europe has something called the Extremely Large Telescope, which I gather will be rolled out at some point in the near future. Can we expect, therefore, do you think, more and more of these types of discovery, the better our abilities get in terms of the technology?
Well, the technology of observing the sky is increasing all the time. In terms of what we can detect, the precision we can measure is actually quite remarkable, even over a few years ago. And it is interesting that in the search for signals from intelligent life in space, we have so far had about 70 searches, and we have detected nothing that is unusual or extraordinary. And that actually tells us something very interesting about searching for life in space, because searching for microbes on a nearby star is the ancillary to searching for intelligences such as our own. And as it was said, it's unlikely they would be as young or as dumb as we are. They could be much older than us. And the question is, and the question should be engaged with more often, because it this could happen tomorrow, is will there be billion-year-old cosmic princes of peace who would look on us benevolently? Or could they have had 1 billion years to build up a nasty attitude and not just like our form of life? No human knows the answer to those questions. And since we could find intelligent life in space tomorrow, this is something that we should talk about, because until we find them, we will not be ready. And even when we find them, it may be too late for us to do anything about it.
Yeah, and with this amazing technology out there, these telescopes that are incredibly powerful and getting more powerful as the years go by, plus the advent of artificial intelligence, which presumably will be somehow incorporated into this technology. And I just wondered how astronomers and people looking for life beyond this planet, how they know where to point the telescope and which direction to look. Is there a process of elimination where they'd say, definitely not over there, let's try over here? Nick, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that's actually more a question for David with his area of expertise. But I think, it's the old adage, if what you're doing isn't working, try something else.
Okay, Dr. Whitehouse, how do you think astronomers decide where they're going to go on a hunt for? How do you think they made this discovery? What was the thinking behind it?
There have been various strategies to search for life, and they've been looking at nearby stars, particularly sun-like stars, and more recently red dwarf stars, which you think could be very good for a habitable place. More civilizations could develop around long-lived red dwarf stars and perhaps around our own yellow star. So individual stars sweeping the skies for beacons. There have been lots of strategies carried out, because the thing is, you can't presume what an alien is like or how they would communicate with you. It's no human can think the way an alien thinks. But certainly over the next few years, with things like the Rubin telescope coming online soon, which are going to scan the sky several times a night, very quickly, looking for anything that moves, this is going to be a new paradigm in astronomy. We're going to get so much data about the things which change in space and the things which change seen in various wavelengths and in various ways, that we are going to actually set ground zero for the assumptions of life in space. And it may well be that when we do find life in space, be it intelligent or otherwise, it will not be through a targeted search of we are looking for this. It will be through the old adage of an astronomer looking at data and saying, that's strange, that's unusual, let's look a bit further at that. When I was a radio astronomer at Jodrell Bank, we looked at all sorts of objects, and each one of us had in the back of our mind, in the back of our drawers, a little program which looked for intelligent signals or evidence of artificiality, because we knew it could come from anywhere. So that's what makes the search for aliens, for intelligences, so exciting these days, because the technology is now growing up at such a rate that we are probing the universe in such great detail that we have hope that we may find intelligent life somewhere soon. And if we don't, well, that's telling us something significant as well.
I'll come back to Nick in just a moment, because while we were talking, Dr. Whitehouse, I just wanted to ask you, I mean, that subject about artificial intelligence, and I want to ask you whether you've seen or heard any suggestions that AI is going to do a better job of locating life outside this planet than we have done. I mean, after all, the potential is huge, isn't it?
Oh, certainly. I mean, space probes that are scanning the sky with looking for incredible amounts of data, like Euclid, like the Rubin telescope, like future telescopes, they produce a prodigious amount of data, which is impossible for a human to analyze. Therefore, AI intelligent programs are looking through these things for initially what we know. But what we've learned from AI and ChatGPT and stuff like that, large language models, is that AI can adapt and understand, and it can find things that we hadn't asked it to look for. So it may well be that we find in this vast amount of data coming from future space probes something strange that only AI would be able to pick up. If I was a young astronomer at this time, looking forward to these wonderful instruments over the next few decades, I'd be very hopeful about finding evidence for intelligent life in space.
Nick, let me turn back to you, and I'd like to sort of ask you to recall your time investigating UFOs for the British Ministry of Defence. First of all, I mean, are you aware, without giving away any British government state secrets, of any contingency plans or any comms plans? Is there a strategy in place on how to break news of this magnitude to the public, if indeed a massive and significant discovery is made like this?
No, there isn't. And rather sadly, a while ago, the British government was having a look at, just as a sort of fun, almost as a thought experiment, how it might be announced. I think that plan might be dusted off now. And I think governments all around the world need to start thinking about this, because whatever we might find, if we do find any definitive evidence of the existence of extraterrestrial life, and particularly if it is a civilization and not just microbes, this will touch almost every aspect of our society, I would think. Politics, religion, science, technology, the economy, philosophy, and much more besides. So why wouldn't we want to have that conversation? I should just pick up on the point about artificial intelligence. I mean, there was mention earlier of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence program, the radio astronomers looking for signals. That's a very good example of where AI can go back through the vast amounts of data that the SETI scientists have amassed over the years and look for patterns which, as David says, human analysts might miss.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the scope for marrying these two types of technologies is incredible. I'm just staying with you, Nick, for a moment. I'll ask you to draw on your memories working with the British Ministry of Defence. I mean, have you got any anecdotes to share with us, or any stories from your time there where you thought perhaps this really was, you'd fallen upon some pretty convincing evidence that you'd found evidence of a UFO or some sort of alien life form?
Well, we didn't have a smoking gun, but we did have some very interesting cases. And the ones that interested us were, of course, the ones where you had something detected across multiple platforms, multiple sensor platforms. And we've seen this recently, for example, with some of the US Navy videos and some of the other statements coming out that these things are being seen by pilots, tracked on radar, filmed on forward-looking infrared cameras, and sometimes detected on satellite. And when that happens, and when these things perform speeds, maneuvers, and accelerations that seem to go beyond the cutting edge of anything that we have or allies or adversaries have, then that at least makes us pay attention and say, look, we don't have an answer to the UFO mystery, but we should be looking at it through the lens of a potential defense and national security issue. And that, of course, is exactly why the US government now has congressional hearings on this. And we see this in both the Senate and the House, in the Armed Services Committees, the Intelligence Committees, the Oversight Committees. And this subject has come from fringe to mainstream, and rightly so.
I'd like to ask you both, perhaps starting with Dr. Whitehouse. I mean, do you genuinely believe that alien life exists?
Red Bull gives you wings.
Yeah, I'm sure it does, but I have absolutely no proof whatsoever. And the recent spate of objects seen in space is no proof of anything. They are certainly, if you analyze them carefully and scientifically, not breaking any laws of physics. They're not doing anything unusual. And in most cases, as far as you can identify them, they are pretty ordinary objects. So we are seeing a spate of the mundane be interpreted as the extraordinary. And there has always been a plan to break this news to the public. When I was a journalist at the BBC, we were always talking with ministers and secretaries of states. And one of the things we used to break the ice with was talking about aliens. And we had ideas and plans as to what to do, as you would expect. That if we had to break news about wars or conflicts, we had ideas to do that. And there are scientists currently, and for instance, at the St Andrews Post-Detection SETI Hub, who are talking to governments of all around the world and politicians about how this should be done. So there are ideas and plans about what this means. But at the moment, we have nothing to talk about. There is no evidence whatsoever of alien incursion into the Earth, nothing unusual, nothing that cannot be explained when you look at it scientifically. I wish there were. I was in the UFO encyclopedia in 1985 saying that I would believe it if they landed on the Whitehouse lawn. And I didn't mind if it was the one in America or the one in Hampshire where I live. I wait for the evidence. So many people have got fuzzy blobs. So many people have got stories. Nobody has got evidence.
Let me ask you, Nick. I mean, is your hunch that we are not alone in this universe?
Yes. Life out there, I'm absolutely sure. Life visiting us down here, I don't know, but I hope so, because I think the world would be more interesting with aliens in than not, as I think we've seen with the buzz of this discovery just in the last few hours. And as for how it might be announced, I just have this wonderful vision in my head. And I know this is a very US-centric thought, but I imagine the President of the United States going live on television and saying, "My fellow Americans, people of the world, we are not alone." And I think we might be the generation that sees that. I certainly hope so.
David, Dr. Whitehouse, I think you wanted to come in and make a point there.
It might happen in the future with a discovery, but the idea that cover-ups, conspiracies, that we have the evidence that we are being visited is delusional. I would hope the American president, whoever he or she is, would say we have evidence that we are not alone in the universe because of science, not because of fantasy.
Okay, well, indeed.
Well, I hope that science is the key to this. And, that's not to say that we shouldn't look at the other data too. And I'm pleased to say that the newly formed task force on the declassification of federal secrets will be looking at this subject too. So I think we've got everyone working on this, whether it's the government officials or the scientists. But I think a multidisciplinary approach to this is the way forward. But it's certainly an interesting time to be having this conversation.
Yeah, and what do you think is the enduring appeal of this search for life beyond our solar system? I mean, help us get to the bottom of it. Nick, your thoughts first.
Well, I think it's one of the biggest and most profound questions we can ask ourselves as humans. There are, I suppose, a certain number of big philosophical questions. What if anything happens to us after we die? But the question of whether or not we're alone in the universe, that's one of those big questions. And it's also, if we are talking about a civilization and not just microbes, it's a potentially very impactful question, because as I said earlier, the idea that there might be civilizations out there with a billion-year head start on us, what might their knowledge of science be? What might their engineering skills have brought up? Arthur C. Clarke once said that any sufficiently advanced technology would be indistinguishable from magic, and that excites me.
Okay, Dr. Whitehouse, what do you think is the reason for this perpetual appeal of the search for life beyond our solar system?
Well, I think most people want to find out if we're alone in the universe, if there are beings born under the light of different stars that have grown up and share our wonder of the universe and see it the same way we do. And they may have knowledge, they may have information and technology that we don't. And we should be very careful about interacting with them, because knowledge, particularly over such a long period of hundreds, billions of years, could actually be very dangerous to us. So this is a dangerous enterprise. But fundamentally, it is a search for our place in the universe, our understanding of how we fit into everything. Do they see the universe the same way we do? I'm not so much interested in an alien's science, because they would understand hydrogen molecules, they would understand electronics and planets and stars and like that. What I would like to hear is their art, their literature, their philosophy. That would really tell us about how different we are from them and how they see the universe differently from us. That would tell us a great deal about ourselves. It was once said, I think, by the philosopher Lauren Isley, we will never understand ourselves until we look at ourselves through the eye of an alien. I hope one day that we will have that point of view, but I hope we will have the discussion leading up to that, because we need to talk about this. The idea that we could encounter the adjacent possible is something that could happen tomorrow, and we need to be ready, and we're not.